This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is your one-stop shop for making a podcast. They give you everything you need in one spot. You can record, you can edit, you can add music, you can add sounds, make sure that your podcast sounds great, and best of all, you can distribute your podcast to all platforms where podcasts are available with just one click. Everything you need in just one place. All you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I'm going to Hollywood. They'll say that I'm so good. I won't care how I feel, and I'll get the Brook Shield, and I'll just sit and grin. The money will roll right in. And I would give you some if you only would have treated me nice, and you wish that you did. You'll feel pretty stupid, and I'll just sit and grin. The money will roll right in. And I'll just sit and grin. The money will roll right in. It's fun to be a star. It's nice to have a car. Yeah, you'll have to admit that I'll be rich as shit. And I'll just sit and grin. The money will roll right in. The money will roll right in.
Estás escuchando el peor podcast de la historia, Anchor's App, with Jeremy Gavey. Lo peor que le ha pasado a los barcos desde el Titanic es pura basura.
You're listening to Anchor's Up Podcast with Jeremy Gavey.
Pumping them out, you could pump out, a record a year. Probably it would take you 6 or 7 though.
Yeah.
You might not, you might do 2 or 3 years in a row, but then I think at some point you probably, burn out. I do know, that like Green Day, the record that came out that had "I Want to Be on TV," the Fang cover, "I Want to Be on TV" on it. It was the 5th record in a five record deal for them, and so for that sort of 5th record, they took a bunch of sort of outtakes, B-sides, and covers, and recorded a couple more new songs and threw it all together and released that as their sort of 5th record, so they could make a new deal.
Wow, that's actually kind of cool that in addition to like kind of a fuck you to the record company, they gave props to all the other.
Well, it definitely worked out for us, So that was. And I think that's not uncommon, like you've done 4 records, and either, with either the label has almost, shelved you at that, the labels almost shelved you at that point because, you didn't blow up the way they thought you were going to, or you are doing really well at that point and you want to make a better deal, Right. And so I think that's not uncommon. Though it's now the whole industry has changed so much. I don't even know. I don't think anybody knows how things are going to go. My understanding is, because everything is digital download. There's not, the money in the hard copy. Like CD, records, cassettes, is not there anymore to the degree that it was. I don't think that they make a record label doesn't make the same markup. So it's like they put X number of dollars into promotion, and recording and all that, and then they put out a record. They're probably I don't know what the percentage is, but they're probably making a much bigger percentage on a hard copy of anything than they are on a digital download. So I could be wrong about that too. Maybe they're making more money because they don't have to pay the overhead of a hard copy. I don't know, but I do know that the big labels are, to a degree, they're trying to figure out what's next. And my understanding is one of the ways that they're actually making money now. This is a total aside. It has absolutely nothing to do with Fang because we're a punk rock band that doesn't do this shit. But, but they will they pre-sell the advertisement space on YouTube. And that's how the big record labels make their money. So, you go on YouTube to listen to a song and there's an ad at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so that's attached to the labels are like buying up that space and selling it to advertisers, and that's how they're making their money. I don't know, anyway. Did you used to get significant checks for your record sales at all the record shops, or was that, how did that work with your, because you guys had your own company, you had your own. Yeah, it was, Fang has always, been, other than, like we've made some money off of the bands covering us, but as far as like what we make for the records, it is it's Fang cost me more money than I ever make. Right, and that was then, right? So now it's probably near nothing, huh? Well, we what happens for us now is, we tour and you could call Fang like kind of a break-even band, I guess you could say, because we're able to tour. In the past 10 years, we've been to Brazil, we've been to Japan, we've been to Mexico many times. We've been to Europe. We played Rebellion in the UK. We've been able to tour all over the place, and we don't really come back with any money. But we're able to, when we go out on the road, we're kind of able to, we break even. We don't come back with money, or a bunch of money, or very little. But we're able to travel all over the fucking world. And exactly. And also, it's I think it's you can't talk to a person in the scene that doesn't have respect for you guys. It seems like you guys have made your mark. Like I saw this one documentary about punk, and then they went out, they spread out to a picture of the United States, and then they had all the logos of the bands, and then yours was right in the Bay, and it's and you guys have definitely made your mark, and that's really cool. And we've been around for a long time now, so that's I think just by not quitting, that has helped us a lot. And by the other bands that covered us, we talked about before, that definitely helped get our name out there. And Green Day put out that movie a couple years ago, and
I didn't see that.
It's called, I'm trying to remember the name. God, I'm horrible with names like this. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I can't remember it off the top of my head.
What was the? It was just a documentary about their.
Yeah, it's a documentary about sort of like the East Bay punk rock scene and the beginning of Green Day, and definitely focused a lot on Gilman Street. But they bankrolled it, and you know, so that means, I mean, Iggy Pop narrated it, you know, so since. Yeah, I mean, they had a Green Day can afford to, you know, produce a really, really high quality documentary, and they did. You know, they had a guy named Corbett. He's a local guy. He was the director, and you know, he put it all together. It took years. You know, it took a couple of years to put it all together. He got just amazing footage and flyers from the Bay Area punk scene from the late 70s all the way up till, you know, it kind of, till current to a degree, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think? Why can't I remember?
What do you think made Green Day so, like, palatable for pop culture? Like there was a gazillion punk bands at the time, and that something about them was so ready for mainstream, and I don't think they at any point I didn't see them like making a big shift, you know. They were big Gilman guys, you know, and what do you think it was that made them so popular out of everybody that was coming out?
Well, I mean I think that they could really play their instruments, and I think Billy Joe can really sing. You know, I think that they're actually very talented musicians in their own right. And I think
they kind of had go ahead. Go ahead.
Kind of. Well, I know, but as far as musical taste, what people like, dude, I will die whenever I die, and I will still not understand people's tastes. You know, right. I never have been able to figure that out. I gave up a long time ago. You know, I mean, good and bad. You know, it's like why did some bands, you know. I mean, Green Day, at least I can understand. There are most of the bands that are millions of people listen to. I scratch my head and I go, dude, how I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand, you know. And so then to ask me why a band like Green Day, other than the fact that, you know, I mean, you hear them when they were young. You know, I didn't see Green Day. I was already locked up before they sort of broke onto the scene. But you know, you see early footage of them, and, you know, compared to a lot of the other bands that were playing back then, it's like, okay, no, like Billy Joe can really sing, you know, and
you know what's interesting? You know, I always wonder about when you're putting together a band like that, you know, like a bunch of gritty guys, you know, some punk guys. But then, you find a lead singer that can really sing, like, and that's, you know, a diamond in the rough all in itself. But then to find, you know, one of your other guys has got to be able to harmonize, you know. Right. And I always thought that funny, you know, like that's whoa, like, and you know, off the bat they did. But it's interesting.
Right, and I mean, you know, it's just, I think that I don't know. Obviously, the world was. I think with music, usually it's you know, talent is important, but as far as it's also drive. The other thing that didn't happen with Green Day is they didn't crash and burn. Like, you know, that I mean, I've known many really talented people. that, just destroyed themselves, drugs, alcohol, or they didn't have, the drive to just keep going when shit got really hard, to get in the van one more time for no money, to crash on somebody's floor, to just suck it up and, deal with what you have to deal with to keep going. Touring is definitely not for everyone. I mean, I've always loved touring, but certainly you get some people on the road, and they think they want to play music, but, it is not, it's hard, I mean, you spend a lot of fucking time in a vehicle, and unless you're making shit tons of money, you're spending a lot of time in a little van with 4 or 5 other people, and you got to smell everyone's farts, and you don't get away from them, and shit breaks, and then you're stuck in the middle of fucking nowhere, and you're going, okay, are we going to get fucking lynched by rednecks out here, or, your shit gets stolen, I mean, it's definitely, touring is not for everyone, it is not, either I think you love it or you hate it,
Right.
And unless you really love it, at some point you're not going to keep playing music, because it's just, you can say, well, I'd rather be home with my, significant other, than go out on the road again, and as soon as you start putting anything between yourself and moving forward in your music, career, then things change, like, one of the bands that I really saw committed to really promoting themselves and doing that was the Dropkick Murphys. They came on the scene kind of late, but they toured relentlessly, to the point where, their original singer, Mike, he finally was like, I think he had an offer, or he wanted to go become a fireman, and I think he'd just been on the road too much, and he's like, dude, it's just, like constantly being on the road, no money, living like that, and he left the band right before they really broke huge, I
didn't know that. I didn't know they had 2 separate lead singers.
Yeah, he went on to do a band called Street Dogs, and it was a great, street punk band. But, I mean, Dropkick Murphys became a,
was the kind of chubby guy that was wearing the little Newsies hat? That was the first guy, right?
But I mean, the singer Al's that they have now, I mean, he's been in the band for probably 20 years now.
Okay.
So I mean, that their original singer left. Well, I could probably 20 years, like probably right around the 2000. I would,
oh, wow.
I'm not sure. But yeah. So
isn't that crazy?
And they grabbed. What's that?
Isn't that crazy? That was 20 years ago, 2000.
Yeah. Right. Yes. That is definitely crazy. Definitely crazy.
When did you guys make the final decision to come back to America for good?
Well, we were just back after '86. We were back and forth until my girlfriend in Germany got busted. Right. So from 86, 87 till 88. It was just a couple years. We were back and forth. We were recording over there, touring Europe half the time, and the rest of the time we were living in California, touring the U.S. And I was dealing nationally, and then I was dealing in Europe, and my girlfriend in Germany was dealing for me when I was not in Germany. And so, so what happened was that we were supposed to go back. We were supposed to go and record the record Pissed Off Buddha. It would have been our 3rd record recorded with George Zima, the Boy George's sound guy,
Right.
And so we had a tour set up. We were supposed to, we had a studio time booked, and 3 days before we were supposed to go, I got a phone call, and it was from a friend of mine in Germany, and he said, hey, Astrid, who was my girlfriend in Germany, got busted. That the cops raided her apartment. She had a roommate, Bina. Bina and her boyfriend were dealing hash. Astrid was dealing acid, and it was a big party pad. Somebody must have dropped a dime on them. The cops raided the pad, found a bunch of drugs. Then they all went to jail, and Bina, her roommate, basically, from my understanding, just rolled on Astrid and me, said, "Look, all the drugs are coming from this guy from California. He's supposed to be coming to Europe. This is who he is." And so they knew when I was coming. They knew who I was, and they had run this all up to Interpol. So I was wanted by Interpol for international drug trafficking, and so that's what stopped us from going back to Europe.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end for me. That really started a very hardcore downward spiral. That I had been a junkie off and on for years, but we tended to tour a lot, and maybe I've covered this before. I don't know.
I think it was manageable, right? Like it was.
Yeah, but I was able to manage it. But then once that happened, everything really really fell apart. And then ultimately, what happened was, I had a girlfriend. She was my, I moved her to California. She became my business partner. And then I went through the whole explanation of exactly what happened before. I don't know if you lost that too.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so my girlfriend, she was a good businesswoman. She did not shoot heroin. She was not a junkie. She became very resentful about my drug use, and ultimately she got together with my best customer, this guy out of Texas, and they got together behind my back, and they had decided to take my business from me, and she was going to move with him to Texas. So she started telling my customers all over the country that I had built up relationships with for many years that I was really fucked up, which was true. But she also was saying that I was burning people and that I couldn't be trusted, which was not true. I've been doing dope for years, and I was able to take care of business, but I didn't know any of this. But the band at this point too, I was pretty fucked up on heroin, and all I was doing was dealing, traveling around dealing and shooting dope. And finally the band got really sick of it too. They got sick of my heroin addiction. And so the band I had basically just walked away. We had gone in the studio and recorded. We'd gone in the studio in San Francisco to record Pissed Off Buddha, but I was just so fucked up that, I was really not able to, I was barely able to do it, barely able to record. And they knew we couldn't go back to Europe anymore, which, everyone was super bummed about. They knew that, it was a matter of time before probably Interpol somehow got a hold of me, and so they just fucking walked. So I have no band, I've got a huge habit. And then one night, I get a phone call from one of my customers, and he starts acting real funny on the phone, and I jam him up, and I'm like, dude, what's going on? Because I knew something was up, and he broke it down to me. He said, look, she's been telling me that you're super fucked up, and that you're doing scandalous shit, and that she's moving to Texas, and that everybody needs to deal with her exclusively from now on. So I got that phone call, and I hung up the phone, and the phone rings again, and it's this other mutual friend of ours, and she hadn't told him because he was a friend of mine. I think he liked me, and he was her friend, but we got along real well. She hadn't told him she was planning on bailing on me.
Right.
So he answered the phone, and he let it slip, not on, because he didn't know he was supposed to keep it quiet, that she had been sending him money, that he had created a bank account for her, and that she'd been pulling money off the top and sending it to him, and that, he was sitting on $20,000 in a bank account on the East Coast. He thought she was doing it for us, but, she had been. So I got
a matter
call.
of a matter of what 15 minutes that you get all this information.
Yes, literally in a 15-minute time, period of time. It was that quick that those phone calls just came back to back. So I just walked out of the apartment and I didn't say anything. I just left. And I didn't know what to do. I went to my dope dealer's house. I got a bottle of Jack Daniels, shot a bunch of heroin, and trying to figure out what to do, and got super fucked up, and then came back to my apartment to confront them because the guy from Texas was in the apartment at the time too. He was in town, on a buy, and so I came back to confront them. And when I came in the apartment door, he was coming out of my bedroom pulling his boxer shorts up because they must have heard the car pulling the driveway. And so when I saw that, I just snapped, and I went for him and chased him, and he ultimately just ran. He got out, and she didn't make it out, So at that point, I took off. I went on the run. I ran for about 6 months up until I was arrested in Alaska, and they brought me back to Oakland to face 25 to life.
Wow, Alaska. How'd you end up there?
Yeah. Well, I had a friend of mine who was a what's that? Yes. I had a friend of mine who had gone to Alaska, and she had gotten clean in Alaska. She was an Oakland hooker that I'd known forever, a good friend of mine, and we'd always stayed in touch. She knew I was on the run, and she's like, look, you're never going to be able to keep running, if you're strung out. Why don't you come to Alaska and, you can actually get clean up here. And so that's what I did. I went up to Alaska and I kicked heroin up there. And then,
with your buddy, with your friend, you managed to kick for how long?
Well, I mean, there was just so little heroin up in Anchorage at that time, and it was so insanely expensive.
Right.
So I did manage to find a dope dealer up there, a heroin dealer. But by the time I found him, I was, pretty much, about halfway through the kick, and I was also 24 years old. So when you kicking heroin at 24 is a whole lot different than kicking heroin when you're 35 or 40, and so I was able to kick, and I just started drinking and partying up there. And the other thing about Anchorage at that time was that there was very little. There weren't hardly any cops in Anchorage at that time. And so it was really easy to just run petty crime and kind of run amok in Anchorage at that time. There was a couple of punk rockers that I had met up there through my friend, and we ran amok up there. We were doing, we were boosting. We were doing, me and one of my friends, Jerry's dead now, we were doing were doing armed robberies. We were robbing liquor stores, and pulling licks like that. Because for me, it's just a matter of time. I figured it was all just going to end anyway. And but we're robbing liquor stores in the middle of winter in Alaska. And so if anybody knows about living in a area where there's a lot of snow, you can't peel out, and take off, because your tires will spin. So Jerry had this little Ford pickup, and he would pull up and I would hop out, and I'd go into a liquor store, pull a gun on dude and give me the cash register money, and then he'd start driving when he saw me start to come out, and I would literally jump in the back of the pickup truck, and we'd have the
nail away.
And just drive off at 5 miles an hour, which, that's insane, but that's robbing liquor stores in Anchorage, Alaska, in the fucking, in the 90s, or actually I was in the 80s still, but,
well, you're at that point you're polishing the brass in the Titanic, so you don't care, right?
No, right. And I mean, it's like in Alaska, probably was a lot more likely we'd just get shot, than it would be actually getting busted, but at any rate, after being up there for a while, and like I said, we were just running amok, finally, that there were people in the scene that were working with the police trying to bust me.
Right.
And I had a friend that was sort of in that crowd, and they were giving me a heads up when these people would talk to the cops. And word had somehow gotten down to them that I was in Alaska. So my friend called me and said, hey, the cops, somebody dropped a dime. The cops know you're in Alaska. You better fucking bail. And so I basically took off and went to the airport right then and there, and it was the middle of a snowstorm, and the airport was shut down. And so I had to wait 24 hours for the storm to pass, and by that time, when I came back to the airport the next day, they were waiting for me. Yeah, and the federal marshals, the federal marshals busted me in the airport, and then ultimately, but I didn't fight extradition, and I ended up, back in Oakland, So
that's crazy. So did you have money for an attorney, or did somebody pull up? Who'd you go with?
No, I had a public defender. There was a guy. He actually requested to do to be my public. He worked in the Oakland Public Defender's office, but he had gone to school with Tim Yohannan from Maximum Rock and Roll. So when he saw the case about a punk rock kid who was accused of murder, he requested it. But Tim Yohannan and Maximum Rock and Roll had actually published in Maximum Rock and Roll wanted flyers. And so when this guy told me he knew Tim Yohannan, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. That guy helped to get me busted. Why the fuck would I want you as my attorney? And he's like, no, listen. He goes, listen. He goes, I went to college with Tim Yohannan. We're not friends. I don't know him. So he convinced me that I should use him as my public defender, and which I did.
At this point, are you feeling like I'm completely fucked? Like there's no way out. Like this is the end kind of thing, or were you?
Well, that was. So when I ended up, when I was in jail in Alaska, I'd been in jail. I don't know. Everything takes a long time. Like extradition. I mean, once you're in jail, then they just sit on your ass. And I'm in jail. I'd been in jail. I don't know, probably a couple weeks, and I can't even remember why, but I ended up getting into a fight with some guy, in the mod up there. It was like Cook Inlet Pretrial Facility. It's like the Anchorage County Jail. And so I ended up in the hole, in county jail in Alaska. And so I'm in the hole up there in county jail. I'm waiting I'm facing extradition, to go back to California to face 25 to life. And when you come into jail, at least back then, they gave you a mandatory HIV test. Now, I'd never had an HIV test before, but, I'd been, shooting dope since I was 14 or 13.
Right. It's a little scary.
Shared needles with everybody because we didn't know we weren't supposed to. And, and had, many instances of unprotected sex with nefarious people. So I assumed that I was probably HIV positive, so it's like, basically I'm sitting in the hole in county jail in Alaska going, well, I'm going to get, I've got a death sentence coming at me one way or another, and so I had decided that I was going to kill myself, and I started tearing up a sheet, and figuring out how I was going to attach it to the door. And I got about halfway through that process, and then finally I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to take myself out. If I find out I've got HIV, well, I'll run it till I get sick and then I'll do it. And if the state wants to put me down, I won't fight the death penalty. But I'm not going to do it myself, And so sort of from that moment on, I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to ride it out and see what happens, and so
at a point of nothing to lose, right? Like what?
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, like it can't get any worse than this,
But
so
what's weird in a backwards kind of way, like that is a really good way to go into prison, like well, whatever happens, It's
right. And also too, it is it's something that I remind, if I get down, if I, am having a hard time, if I'm struggling, you never know what's going to happen. At that point, I had a lot of evidence to believe that I was going to spend at best the rest of my life in prison.
Right.
There was a lot of evidence that supported that was a real likelihood. There's also a lot of evidence to support that it was a real likelihood that I was going to come back HIV positive and die of AIDS, because at that time people were, just dropping dead. And so it's, if I had taken myself out at that, if I'd hung myself in that cell, I don't think no one would have been surprised, and everyone, said, well, you know what, of course he did, given where he was at that point, a lot of people would have, but the
right. In a very fun way to go out,
And yeah, I mean, in the long run, I didn't have HIV, and although I did go to prison for a number of years, I also got out of prison, and then, I've had, many experiences since then. Obviously, a lot of people don't feel I deserve those, and I can't argue that,
right.
But by the same token, it's like, well, I'm not going to take myself out, so I'm just going to do the best to live and as best I can, and also to try and help other people along the way. I mean, that's definitely, like, I know that the scales will never balance for what I did and for what I got to prison and things didn't get better for a long time. I think when we talked earlier, I told you, I mean, I was in San Quentin, I think 3 weeks before me and my cellie threw this guy off the 4th tier and put him in a wheelchair for life. I mean, that was just the beginning, of prison.
Right.
And there were many other instances before I turned myself around in there of, because I kept doing the things I've been doing. I was involved in drug trafficking in prison. I was involved in, in violence, obviously, in prison, and, doing what people do in there, and and I did that for many years before I actually had a moment of clarity, you know, and you know, and started trying to do the right thing. And, you know, it's,
were you managing to get were you sober all through prison, or were you managed to?
No, I didn't. I was down for about 5 years before I got sober. I was shooting heroin.
Oh, wow, okay.
Drinking Pruno for most of my, you know, and then the last 2 or 3 years, I finally got sober in prison. And if I hadn't got sober in prison, I never would have gotten out, you know, because after I cleaned up, I just tried to not be, you know, not be involved in shady shit as much as I could. I mean, you know, you
on a certain level have to, right? Like,
you often don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, if you, you know, you are expected to toe the line, you're expected to show up if shit's about to go down. And it's not like you can say, you know what, fellas, I'm trying to do things different now, you know, so I'm just going to, I know you guys are going to go out and riot, but I'm just going to sit this one out. That's okay, right? You know, it's just,
not feeling too rowdy today.
Yeah. You know, the Golden Girls are on at 3. I'm just going to stay in my cell, you know. So you don't get to do that.
It's like a crazy balancing act, right? Because you have to obviously, you know, like appear to be down, and you're trying to do the right thing, but not set off any alarms. Like, that must have been a crazy. Was it hard to do?
That was after I sort of had that moment of clarity when everything really changed for me. That was the hardest time I ever had to do.
Yeah.
You know, because like you said, going into prison, I didn't, you know, I didn't, like, it's like whatever, you know, I didn't care anymore because, you know, and you really have to just shut a lot of yourself down, you know, to be able to thrive in that environment. And
was there a support system in getting sober? Was it in the? I mean, there's got to be a couple old school cats that are sober, and you know, like was there a support system that were like, yeah, right on, or nobody paid attention?
Okay, so not at first. So what happened was, you know, I had this sort of this epiphany when I got my first conjugal visit after being down for like 5 years, you know, and so all of a sudden I you know, stopped getting loaded. You know, I actually started having to come to terms with what I'd done to get into prison. You know, like you know, basically, you know, for me, it was like I had no conscience, and then I had this moment of clarity, and all of a sudden, like, I had a conscience, and I'm like, holy shit, like, I'm a fucking horrible person, you know, and I've done some really fucking horrible things, you know, and so, but like you said, I mean, I still have to, on the outside, act as if I'm the person that I was before, you know, and so it took about 6 months. What happened that also was a lifesaver was I dropped points. So every year when you're in prison in California, you go up with your counselor and they review you yearly. And, you know, if you haven't gotten into trouble, then they subtract points. If you have gotten into trouble, you might get points added, you know. And so they decide if, you know, okay, are you going to go up, down, or stay where you're at, you know? And so I hadn't actually gotten caught for anything in a couple years. And so my points dropped and I was able to transfer. I was in, I dropped down to level 3 points a couple years before, and I'd been in a level 3 for a few years, and my points dropped to level 2 points. And so I had planned on just getting a little write-up and then, staying on that yard because I'd been on that yard a few years. I had I had some status on that yard. I had a lot of things locked in, but all those things were, drugs and, they were, just crime. So instead of on purpose getting caught, I just kind of tried to float under the radar as much as I could. And when my points dropped, they shipped me to another prison. And the prison I got shipped to was Vacaville. Vacaville was probably best known for where Charles Manson got lit on fire at one point.
Wow. He went everywhere, didn't he? He was like he did a tour of the California prisons. I feel like.
Well, I think he was probably around. I mean, he ended up in Corcoran until he died. But before he was in Corcoran, he was in Vacaville. And Vacaville, compared to the other prisons I'd been in, I called Vacaville Disneyland. It was so different from any other prison I'd been in. I mean, there were, politics there were a joke. I also had been down a number of years. There was, it was very easy to just do my time. And there were a couple times when I first got there, because once I got there, I was pretty much, and I saw the lay of the land there. I'm like, you know what? I'm not fucking around. I'm not doing stupid shit, and I got jammed up twice by guys saying, hey, like, what the fuck? And I'm like, well, let's go, and so we'd go and fight about it. But, once they realized I was going to fight about it, then they're like, okay, well, if that's, and also in certain circumstances for certain things, if I was needed, I still would have gone, that's just the way it is there, like if but like I said,
it sounds like it was a perfect situation, like the timeline, as far as your getting sober and trying to do the right thing and getting moved. I think the reason that I ended up in that particular prison too was because they had brought me over there to start a program to read children's books on tape for blind kids. So it's like in every way my life really fucking did a 180, it's like, okay, I'm like running with the fellas and things are insane. And then I'm running this program. I mean, it was with inmates still, but we're doing like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, like radio plays with sound effects and fucking voices for blind kids, so it was, I mean, they brought me over. That'll settle you down.
Did it settle? Oh, it was, I think in a lot of ways that last, actually I just started writing one of my old homies out of, that I got to know in Vacaville, this friend of mine. He was nicknamed the Easter Bunny Killer because he had gone on a rampage on Easter. And he's never getting out of prison, and we just got back in touch. But this guy was, he was a big psychotic motherfucker that most of people were afraid of for good reason. And he and I hit it off, and by the time I paroled, like we were like meditating together and shit, and like it was. In some ways, I think that was maybe some of the most grounded I've ever been, like that especially the last year, that I was in, it was very, very different.
The lockup bras I've seen where they give these guys cats, and they'll have these guys who are just like, I'll kill that motherfucker, and I'll make you eat my dick for breakfast, and then they'll have this cat, oh, come here, baby, come here. It's just like complete paradigm shift.
Yeah, I think that like having inmates raise animals. I mean, I think that is. I think that they should do that in every fucking prison. I really do. Yeah. I think that is. They didn't do that in the prisons I was in, but I mean, I think especially with the cats that they're going to put down anyways.
You know,
right?
I mean,
why not? You know, it's like they're gonna kill him anyway.
Some of them are gonna put those down, you know, but some of them won't. You know, so
yeah, and I think that yeah, no, I think that you find that those kind of programs actually have a huge benefit, you know, in really changing people. You know,
Vacaville's where you actually got out from?
Yeah, I paroled from Vacaville, and I was sent back to Oakland. And so I got married. You know, I had that conjugal visit that was like a game changer for me. It really like woke me up to what could be, and then in subsequent conjugal visit, my wife got pregnant. So Max was born about 7 or 8 months before I paroled. So I got out of prison, you know, with a little nuclear family, and I'm back in Oakland, and you know, and I'm trying to, you know, sober, clean, just trying to fucking, you know, do the right thing, and you know, that was 90. Got out the end of 96, and yeah, that was a long time ago now. You know, 24 years ago, 25 years ago. So,
I know, graduated that year.
Yeah. Well, so did I.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we both graduated that year.
So getting out to get you. I saw a documentary on you. By the way, whoever the tattoo artist is the funniest, coolest dude that I've ever seen.
Oh, Cosmo, fucking rest in peace, guys. That's got to be Cosmo.
Yeah,
that dude was
so funny.
He was,
why the fuck is this guy just a cesspool bag? You know, he's like, but you can tell you guys are buddies. You know.
Oh man, I've known that dude forever. He's such a character. The greatest when my daughter was 11, 12, I don't know, somewhere between 11 and 13. She might have been 13. We went back east and we went and hung out in Cosmo's shop, and she'd always, you know, she would always say, I want to tattoo you, Dad. And I'm like, okay. So we get to Philly and we go to Cosmo's shop. And so Cosmo sits down with her and he puts a stencil on me, and she fucking does this great tattoo. It's like, it's got the letter I, and then there's a pile of shit, and then Dad, you know, instead of I heart Dad, it's, you know, I pile of shit Dad. And it's got like flies out of it. And she did like an amazing job, you know. He just like set it all up. He's like, okay, you do this, you know, and then just handed her the fucking tattoo machine, and she fucking, it was fucking such an awesome experience.
That's awesome. And and she conquered addiction herself, right? Like she went through her own.
Yeah, she did. So after a few years of being out, I fell off. Like I ended up, I was doing real well for about, I think I had 4 years on the streets, or I had about 6 years of sobriety, a couple in and then a few out. And, you know, and I never thought I'd start playing music again. But I started playing music. I put Fang back together in maybe about a year after I got out, and started playing music. And we were out on the road, you know, and we were in a club, and my guitar player at that time, it was Jim Martin from Faith No More. He quit Faith No More, and he was playing in Fang, and he hands me a beer, you know, and I didn't really even think about it, and I drank that beer, and everything just fucking started up all over again for me.
Is the right place? You mean you're the same place, the same, you know, you're at a show, you know, you're drinking. I can see that.
Well, and I'm at a show and I'm drinking, and you know, which, you know, wasn't that big of a deal, but for me,
it is though, right? Like it is
for me, because once I start getting loaded, then, you know, all those things that I had built up, so when I had that moment of clarity, I was in Solano. I was on a conjugal visit, and I'm sitting on the couch. My wife's making dinner. There's like a window above the kitchen sink, and you can see out to where the yard was, and I'm sitting there super institutionalized, and all of a sudden I'm looking out that window, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life on the yard, or maybe I can fucking change everything. And that was like this huge moment of clarity. And after I had that, I put together this like really gnarly moral code that I tried to live by. And once I picked up that first drink, that moral code went out the fucking window, and it didn't happen, like immediately, but it gradually within a 6-8 month period of time, things started to unravel. And after about a year, maybe a year and a half, I'm strung out on heroin again. I'm fucked up. I've got 2 kids. I've got my own company. I own rental property, and I'm fucked up, and I'm a mess. And I try, and more than anything, I never wanted to be in a position where I could hurt anybody again.
Right.
And I, and here I was, and I couldn't stop. And I started trying, I started going to rehab, and I couldn't get clean, and I watched everything, and I just lost everything. The marriage fell apart. I fucking, and I finally just quit trying to stop and basically gave up, and I'm like, fuck it, and just went back to the life that I know, because I think for a lot of addicts and alcoholics, at some point, it becomes easier, and we medicate. However, we medicate hard enough, we quit thinking about what could be or what we don't want to be, and we just revert back to that animal that we were, and that's absolutely what happened to me, and I was out for many years. I was, and I should have ended up back in prison. I absolutely should have ended up back in prison. I was doing crime, and but ultimately what happened was that after I was down in Texas, I had a crime partner down there, and he got busted. And there was a woman down there, and she came and she sat me down, and she's like, there's only 2 ends to this story. She goes, either somebody's going to kill you, or you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. And right. I don't know why I was able to hear her, but I heard her, and I left Texas. I went to Philly. I tried to clean up. I worked on that one documentary that you probably saw a part of, where I'm super wasted in it.
Yeah, you do not look sober when you're.
No, I was far from sober, but I'm in Philly. I'm trying not to do any crime. I'm trying to fucking get it together, and I couldn't pull it together. Finally, I came back to California, and that's where I was able to finally, after struggling it took about a year and a half of struggling just every day to be able to not, to be able to stay sober. Like when I stay clean. When I got to California, I was super strung out on heroin. Nicky Sicky from Verbal Abuse, he's the singer. He's a good friend of mine. Him and this other woman that I had hooked up with. She had this house in Northern California in Monte Rio, and there was a basement room. And so Nikki and we boarded up the windows, literally like put boards over the windows in this basement room, and we put a deadbolt.
It? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Put a deadbolt in the door, so you had to have a key to get out of the door of the room. And then Nikki and this woman Janine, they locked me in that room for a month. They would come in and change the bucket, because I was shitting and barfing in a bucket, and check on me. But that's the only way I get clean, And so after being in that room for a month, I finally had kicked heroin, but I was still a fucking mess. And so, that's why it took me I would go a couple weeks and then I'd fucking take off and get loaded for a day and then come back. And so it took a year and a half before I could stay clean, stay sober, but that was 13 years ago,
Do you think you needed that? You needed that relapse to really get to where you needed to be? After jail?
I have no illusion for myself that I can't even drink a sip of beer. I can't take a little hit off a joint. I can't even take a little sip of beer because I tried that little sip of beer experiment and it failed horribly. That the kind of alcoholic drug addict that I am, if I start that up again, who knows if it's ever going to stop? I was running them up for 8 years, and I should have ended up back in prison for life. I should have ended up dead.
How are you able to run around to these punk shows and because they're probably not sober events, No, how are you?
No, they're definitely not sober. When I first got sober, I always took somebody sober with me, that I had accountability with me, and but for me, I realized a long time ago that I want to play music. That's what I've done consistently since I was 13, 14 years old, and if I want to do that, I have to be able to be okay being around other people that get fucked up, and one of the ways that, it's I realize that this is my problem. Not everybody is a drug addict and an alcoholic. I got plenty of friends who can, drink and party, and it doesn't fuck their lives up like it does mine, So just knowing that this is my problem, and like you said, you asked if that relapse, if I'm glad it happened. Well, I'm glad that I absolutely know that I can't even drink. It was a Coors Light beer that, it was light beer. It's Coors Light. That's like water,
Right.
But one Coors Light, it fucking took everything, I lost the marriage, my kids, my house, I lost everything, and I'm lucky that I didn't end up, in prison for life or dead, which I should have, so, I definitely know, at least for me, that I can't do anything. I can't do anything to alter my mind, because once my mind is altered a little bit, there's no stopping it.
Right.
So
it's really, really, it's a really advanced thought, right? Like I have no control over this. Which nobody wants to think, right? Nobody wants to think that, and I think that's really cool, and the fact that you understand that, that I think that. Tell me if I'm wrong, but when you got out of prison, there's always that thought, right? I'm cool now, right, and there's always that thought, that was then, this is now. And
right. My life is so different now. I'm different now. But when it comes to drugs and alcohol, I am not different, than I was.
Right.
That if I pick up, so, and the other thing that after that changed for me too, that when I got out of prison, You know, like now I'm very involved in recovery. You know, when I got out of prison, you know, I was clean, I was sober, but you know, I wasn't. I didn't really. I built up my world. You know, like I worked very hard. You know, like I said, I started a business. I, you know, like had a family, but it was still very much about me. You know, that you know, I was very, you know, even though I wasn't, you know, doing crime or, you know, I was trying to be a good father and a good husband, you know, it was still very much about me, you know, and definitely, you know, what changed when I came back, you know, was that it's, you know, it is not about me anymore. You know, like I've been given so many fucking chances in life, you know, that I shouldn't have gotten, that, you know, I really I owe it to whatever there is out there to make it about other people, you know, make it about trying to help somebody else not end up making the choices that I made. You know, that is, you know, that's what it has to be about for me. You know, it's like, okay, that's the only thing that makes any sense. Why am I fucking here? You know, I mean, I should not be here.
And why? And why did I get why did I get dealt, you know, such a decent hand, you know, after all that stuff, you know, and I think the answer to that is that you have a purpose in helping in recovery. I think that nobody, there are people that will not listen to anybody, you know, except, I mean, how could you not listen to your story? You know, you can't say you haven't been where I've been, you haven't felt what I've felt, you don't know what it's like, you know, the common, you know, things that people say, like you've been there on a way bigger level.
And I think that is the only thing that makes sense. It's like, yeah, okay, like because you know, I do have people, you know, that in recovery or even outside recovery that they know my story. They might, you know, know me, and they get into a fucked up situation, and they call me, you know, and they're like, dude, I don't know what to do, you know, and you know, so that's you know, that's why I'm here. You know, that's why I believe that's why I'm still fucking breathing, you know, free air, you know, is because I've got you know, like I've got a debt I will never be able to pay. Absolutely. You know, that this, I will never be able to pay the debt, you know, but I think it's absolutely important to be able to fucking, you know, be there and help people. I mean, you know, to not make the same mistakes that I've made, or if they're in a place, you know, in a really dark place, they can, you know, reach out to me and know, like, who the fuck am I to judge anybody? You know, like, I can't fucking judge anybody. You know, it's like, okay, tell me what's going on. Like, I'm not going to judge you because, I mean, who, like, after what I've done, like, I'm not, you know, I can't fucking judge anybody, you know. And so, I mean, I think that, you know, yeah, that people that know me know that they can tell me anything, you know, and I'll do what I can to help them in any way that I can, you know. And
that's awesome, man.
And
are you lined up with anything in Tucson? Or are you?
Well, I just got down here. I started hooking up with a guy that so in Oakland for years, I had a sober house for men, and that I ran, and that was awesome. I loved doing that, you know. But like, you know, like many things in life, it had a, you know, beginning, a middle, and an end, and it finally we had to close down a few years ago. I moved down to Los Angeles to Long Beach, and I worked in drug treatment down there for a year, and then I moved to Tucson just in July, and I've met just kind of, I mean, a fluke. I mean, obviously there's, you know, things are flukes and then they're not, but I work with a guy now, and he works for a company, and they have 300 beds that they supply for most of the people getting out of jail and getting out of prison. So we've been working together, and I know that, you know, I've only been here a couple months, but I know that I will be that, especially when things start to open up again, you know, once the pandemic is over, that I'll find a way to be in a position to you know, help guys down here. You know, I mean, that's,
get something going on here.
Get something going on. You know, I mean, at some point, I'll probably try and do another sober house for men down here, or at least be involved in that in some way. You know, even if it's not my own, just working. You know, because I find that for me, I am. You know, like if I can go into a jail, or, you know, like I was able to go back into San Quentin 2 years ago. They let me go in to a recovery event, which was mind-blowing to be able to, well, the mind-blowing part was to be able to walk out of San Quentin, you know. You know, it wasn't a big surprise that I was going back into San Quentin. It was a big surprise that I was going to San Quentin. They were actually going to let me walk out again on the same day. That was the shocking part. But, you know, just talking to the guys in there, and I mean, you know, the funny, or I mean, not really funny thing is, you know, there was two guys in there that I knew, you know, and you know, they were still, you know, and they were trying to get right, you know, and so, you know, seeing somebody they knew, and, you know, being able to, you know, also just explain too, I mean, the thing about incarceration is, you know, it is, especially, I mean, in California, but everywhere, it's, you know, it's a revolving door, you know, that I mean, the recidivism rate in California is insane. You know, it's probably like 80% now. I don't know what the statistics are right now, but, you know, it's hard to know that there is life after prison. You know, especially if you've been down for a long time. You know, it's like, okay, and it's hard, you know, to you know, get used to civilian life again. You know, to being out here. And so, you know, talking to those guys saying, look, you know, you can do this, you know, there is life after prison. You don't have to fucking come back here if you don't want to. It's not going to be easy, you know, and you're going to have to really like buckle down, and you're going to have to suck it up a lot. But you can stay out, you know? Yeah. And I think that is, you know, a super important message, you know, because it's so easy to get sucked back in and just end up back in there. You know? Well,
I think it needs to be the focus. You know, like there's focus on how many of these people return don't focus on that. Focus on what did you do when they were let go? Was there a support system? Was there things in place for them? Was there housing? You know, was there job experience programs? Was it focus on that? And I guarantee you that next time you turn around and look at, you know, how many went back, it's going to be less, you know?
No. And I mean, and granted that, you know, the politics are so fucked up behind it, you know, I mean, they send people back to, you know, like I had to go back to Oakland. Well, that's where I got in fucking trouble. You know, send me somewhere else. You know, and I tried to go somewhere else, and I tried to go back somewhere else, and they wouldn't let me. You know, and you know, I mean, they say that, you know, the CDC is actually now the CDCR, California Department of Correctional and Rehabilitation. You know, and I know that there are a lot more programs now than there were when you know, when I was doing time. But you know, there needs to be a lot more programs, you know, that it's, you know, instead of just punishment, it needs to be about rehabilitation, because otherwise, you know, you're just building better criminals in there, you know, and you're giving them more reason to be resentful. They get out, it's a setup, they can't get a job, you know, and, you know, the world, you know, looks at them in such a way, and to have an expectation for people to be able to turn it around and change is an unrealistic expectation, because it's just the whole setup, it's rigged, it really is,
Yeah.
So,
and at that point, when you're in that place and you just got out of prison, I'm sure the fuck it card is right there in your pocket at all times,
Yes. And I think for a lot of guys too, if you have been in prison for a while and, you're a reg in there or, a convict, there's sort of a hierarchy in there, you get out on the streets and you're a nobody,
Right.
And so there's definitely, it's easier to be a big fish in a little fishbowl than it is to be out in the world. The other thing that is insane is that, you come from a place where people are more polite in prison than they are on the streets, which may seem like a weird thing to comprehend, but if you bump into somebody or you talk shit to somebody, at least when I was doing time, there was no maybe, it wasn't like you could bump into somebody or tell somebody to fuck off and you weren't going to have a serious, either at best a fist fight in the shower. At worst, you would get stabbed up,
Right.
So one of the things that I know that I've really struggled with was people just being rude, and having to really check my fucking anger, and suck it up, that there's such it's a culture of toxic masculinity that exists in prison to the umpteenth degree of, and it's all about respect and disrespect.
Right.
And
he's gonna be rude, and I can't fuck him up. Like, what the fuck do you mean?
and then the toxic masculinity part steps in and goes, oh, if I don't fuck that motherfucker up,
right.
I'm weak. I'm a punk.
Right.
I'm no good. And so, then people make decisions based on that, and of course they end up back in prison. Some dude cuts them off. And then they're fucking pulling them out of the car and beating the shit out of them. And they're going back on a parole violation or new charges. And, no understanding that you are being controlled by faulty ways of thinking that are just going to be your downfall,
Right.
I mean, and it's really hard, because society definitely is already, we've got so many problems when it comes to that kind of thinking that, that keeps men from being able to have any kind of an emotional life, period,
Right.
That it's
I think
all
it's
about.
really cool that with your story, you're out there helping people that were in your same shoes. That's amazing, dude. It really is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like I said, I know I will never write the scales, but I'm glad that I've been able to, and will continue to be able to, be in a position where I can help some people, where people reach out to me, say, hey, I mean, and it happens all the time, and I'm super grateful for that,
For sure. Well, where can people get merchandise, records? Where can they go on the web to check out your shit?
So we have Fang still going. We just recorded a couple new songs. One we made a music video of. Actually, my girlfriend Annalisa, she put a great video together. It's a song called Minneapolis. It is about George Floyd and the night that the police station in Minneapolis burned down, and I'm still a I still don't like the police. You know, I've been sober a long time. Still don't like the cops.
Common thought.
Yeah, anybody can see that that video is up on YouTube. It just dropped. We're gonna have a 7-inch that comes out with that song and another new Fang song we recorded, and it's a split single with a band called Let It Bleed. That'll be out January, February on our label. We're on a Die Laughing Records right now, and we'll follow that up. We're writing a whole new record, which will come out sometime 2021, and with all new material, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to be back on the road touring. But Fang Official is on Facebook. We don't have a web page anymore, but Fang Official's on on Facebook, on Instagram. Fang Official merch is on Big Cartel. You know, we have records, T-shirts, shit like that anybody can find. And
I'll put the links for those in the bio for anybody that wants to check them out.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and also like I answer all the Fang Official Facebook messages myself. So if anybody wants to yell at me, then they're welcome to. Or if anybody's struggling, with addiction, alcoholism, they've got criminal problems, and they just need somebody to talk to. Like I said, I'm the one who answers the messages on that. So anybody can feel free to reach out, and I will help however I can.
Cool, man. Well, it's amazing what you do, man. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking me. I'm honored that you asked, and I hope you keep sailing that yacht all the way around the world, hitting people up along the way.
So somebody told me that the gas tank has enough gas to get you to Hawaii, and they shouldn't have told me that because I've been fixated on that. I'm like,
because now, yeah, the gears start spinning. You're like, Hawaii, yeah, well, I mean, you got, just up and down you've got Alaska to Mexico too, where you can just bop, all up and even down to South America. That,
yeah,
you just gotta start getting out there,
Yeah. Yeah, it's harbor. It's a little rusty around here.
Right.
I stay stagnant. Cool, brother. Well, thanks a lot, dude. I appreciate you being on the show.
All right. Well, thanks for asking me again. You take care of yourself, and just let me know when you're gonna drop it, and I'll let me know so I can promote the link too for you.
Cool. You got it.
All right. Take care, bro.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Bye.